Hi, Elysia from Will Shift Dust here, back with Luke, our Luke, as we call him on the spoiler cast, to discuss Lukas, the other Luke, and his quest for the Book of Quinn in episode 8 of season 2 of Silo on Apple TV+. And Luke, before we get into our own thoughts in the episode, as usual, can you remind everyone of our spoiler policy, please?
So, Elysia has read all the books that go to comprise the series Silo. I have read none of them. We will be talking about anything that's happened in season 1 and up to and including episode 8 of season 2. We'll also be discussing spoilers for other episodes that have happened in season 1 and 2 to the extent that they matter. But yeah, we won't be talking about anything in the books that hasn't already happened yet on screen, or anything that might give away what's going to happen on screen in the future.
Right. Yeah. So Luke is Luke.
Yeah.
Luke. Luke is a non-book reader, and I know a lot of you in the audience are as well. So we're going to respect that and not spoil anything that happened in the future, but also give you all the comparisons that you might like. I often cannot predict the future in this show because they changed a lot, add new characters and plot lines and all this stuff. So when I'm speculating openly, I'm genuinely speculating. But there are extra speculations that Abby and I do with full book spoilers in a separate spoiler cast, which is in the book club. And this week's topic is going to be the kids of Silo 17. So stick around till the end and we'll talk about how you can listen to those. And yeah, Luke, I think this is the first public episode we've recorded since we got the news that seasons 3 and 4 are officially greenlit.
Yes, it is. So yeah, we have season 3 greenlit, we have season 4 greenlit, but that's going to be it. So,
but that was the original plan that they wanted. So this is perfect.
Okay, so the writers have 22 episodes, assuming they're going to be 10-season episodes like season 1 and 2 have been. They have 22 episodes left in which to wrap up the entire story. So, Elysia, as the book reader, do you think they're going to do it in that span?
Yes. No, it always made sense to me. And to be honest, so we've said the first 2 episodes are the first book, which is true, but they are, for this season, the stuff about the past rebellions. A lot of that they're pulling from the second book, because the second book is a sort of prequel where that looks at different timelines leading up to the story, including those past rebellions. So we're already getting some of that. And I think that they will probably, for seasons 3 and 4, so for season 3, I think they'll switch back and forth between the prequel stuff and the current stuff, because, you know, they're not going to put like Juliette's story on pause or something for a season.
Okay. So yeah. I'm glad that you're confident that you think they have enough time and space to do the books justice. I'm relieved at that.
I am confident that I know what the final reveal is going to be this season. I feel confident where I know where season 3 is going to end, and then the end should end with the trilogy of books. Probably not the short stories, but we'll see if they work any of that in. So, by the way, if you hear a pitter-pattering of little paw prints in the background, my cats have just been fed dinner, and so now it's go wild and chase time. Oh, they're so glad they have more room than they would in Silo. All right, so let's get into season 2, episode 8, The Book of Quinn.
Your regularly scheduled breakdown will begin in 3, 2, 1.
So Quinn's code book has been found, and I'm taking my internet points. It's the pact.
Yes, well done.
But Luke, you also get internet points for something else Martha related. I'm not too happy about, but we're going to talk about it a lot later.
Oh, Walker, what are you doing?
I know. We're going to, I mean, I see to a certain extent where she's coming from, but, you know, we're going to be recording right after this, the feedback episode, and I can say people are not happy about this.
Also, me and Abby, your co-host for the book spoiler episodes, are so collectively relieved that Lukas has had a change of clothes, and presumably...
Yes.
Because we were starting to get serious... Me and Abby were talking on Blue Sky in the last couple of episodes, and we were starting to get serious agita over the fact that we could nearly smell Lukas through the screen at this point.
Yeah. Yes, Lukas is showered, so there's that going for this
Yeah,
episode.
yeah.
Uh, so the Book of Quinn aired Thursday/Friday, January 2nd or 3rd, depending on where you live, 2025. Happy New Year, y'all. And the writer was Remy Aubuchon. We talked about him a bit last season because he also wrote episode 4 of season 1, the one called Truth. And he's a prolific sci-fi writer and producer. And the director of this episode was Amber Templemore. And she also directed, that's one half, by the way, of the Bert and Birdie directing duo from last season. And Amber Templemore also directed episode 5, Descent, of this season. And she's going to be directing the last 2 episodes of this season as well. So, Luke, overall thoughts on the episode?
I thought this was an episode about characters falling to the dark side or towards the Simsnard end of the Simsnard to Juliette scale.
Sorry, that's my Vader impression.
Yeah, so obviously we've got stuff going on with Walker, which we'll get to. But what I think is a little bit more interesting, that is, I think our boy Lukas is actually quite enjoying being shadow head of IT. I think he's sort of feeling his way into the role, but he is on a little bit of a power trip at various points in this episode. I think Judge Sims tries to bring him back down to earth towards the end of the episode. I'm not entirely sure that Judge Sims succeeded, but I think this may be very much the fall of Lucas Kyle. Would be the way I would sort of think about this episode, and the fall of Martha Walker.
Well, I mean, I would say at least in Lucas's case, he got some clapback and he learned from it, and he comes around by the end, because I was like, Lukas, what are you doing? This is not you. And then that guy, Terrence, literally says to him, this is not you. I can tell. He's like, I don't even know you, but this is not it.
But I just took that as Lukas realizing that he catches more flies with honey than with vinegar, not actually.
Okay. All right. Well, we're definitely going to debate this when we get into his plot arc. So we're going to be talking through, as usual, one plot arc at a time. We're going to be starting with this week with everything going on in Silo 18 before switching over to Juliette in Silo 17. So we're going to be talking about events in a somewhat different order than they happened in the TV episode. And we start in the deep, where Shirley, Remy Milner, has decided to add to the wall of names Knox found in the digger room. She paints Cooper on the wall. Oh, I'm glad they didn't forget poor Cooper.
No, I got a little bit emotional. It has to be said, I got a little bit of a lump in the throat when she was doing that. I'm really glad they didn't forget poor Coop.
Yeah. He's a little bit of a Scotty stand-in. So Scotty is a book character who didn't make it into the show. We talked about him more in season 1 because that's when he would have taken place. And there's a lot of affection for this character, Scotty. So when you think of Cooper that way, it's like, oh, Coopy. I don't know. Scotoop? That sounds like something unfortunate you find in your pants. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Anyway, so after this, Shirley confronts Sheriff Billings, Chinasa Uche, in the cafeteria, and he's getting all kinds of side-eye from the Down Deepers. Shirley tells him he's brave for eating Maeve's biscuits, and Billings says it's good chewing exercise, which should please the wife. And yeah, so Maeve, again, is the one who poisoned the food. And if she's not even a good cook, why do you think they haven't given her a new job?
Lack of better alternatives, I guess.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, it is.
I feel like Shirley can cook better and at least hasn't tried to poison anyone.
Yeah, this is true. This is true. Now, I'm not sure doing the job you were doing anyway really counts as the shitty jobs that Knox was telling us she would have to do. I'm not sure doing your regular job really qualifies as that.
Maybe she has to do extra work as well.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. So would you rather eat Maeve's biscuits while Maeve's watching you, or eat Hank's hush puppy stash while he's watching you? Do you want to lose your teeth, or do you want to lose your fingers?
I'd go for the hush puppies. I'd go, those things look tasty.
Mm. It's true. I mean, I would be afraid of making an enemy because if by doing one, I can make a friend as long as I manage to not make a face, which I have failed at once in public. But it's sushi. I was never a fish eater. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, I would worry about making an enemy of Hank. He's very attached to those hush puppies.
Yeah, no, that is a fair point. That is a fair point. But I've never had hush puppies, so I think
Mm,
curiosity alone would drive me to that. Whereas I have had
right,
biscuits,
biscuits.
crackers. So yeah.
Um, Yeah, so these biscuits, by the way, they're more like some British people are like, "Are they like scones?" Like, "No, they're not like scones," and we get into big arguments about it on the Lorehounds Discord. But
So they're like
but they
the
are
US version of biscuits, like the
yeah,
southern version of biscuits.
the southern version of biscuits, yeah. And hush puppies are also southern, but, to be honest, I don't think I've had hush puppies, but I love American biscuits.
Okay.
Okay, well, now that we've settled that important piece of
It's an important gastronomical piece of trivia.
question, yeah.
Yeah,
Now we all know our stomach's a little better. Um,
yeah.
Shirley asks Billings what he plans to do next, and he says he still considers himself sheriff until told otherwise, but he admits he may still be down there because he's hiding out. He says he'll help the Down Deepers, quote unquote, as far as the pact allows, and she asks him what the pact says about Bernard stabbing Meadows in the chest and framing her and Knox, and she's not taking Billings hiding behind needing proof. She says Mayor Holland and Sims will be laughing at his pitiful attempt to bring justice that is not possible for him to procure. And she, Walker, and Knox will be killed. Billings desperately seeks to maintain his faith in the founders, but Shirley says they were probably lying through their teeth about everything. Um, do you think that Billings has a somewhat like religious reverence for the founders? Do you get that sense, or that other people do as well?
A little bit, but I actually thought the way Billings talked about it was actually quite utilitarian. It's we need a set of rules. We need a set of rules to live by. These are the rules that have been handed down.
Mm,
Um, Therefore, in order to sort of stop the silo descending into anarchy, we need to follow them. I didn't think it was a quasi religious thing. I thought it was very small c conservative thing, and I think that that's an important part of who Billings is. He's a cautious guy. He is a
mm,
conservative guy. He's not going to step outside the rules more than he absolutely has to, because I think he has the idea that these rules have been passed down from generation to generation, and that they have survived for a reason. They have survived because they work, because they have kept the people of the silo alive for,
mm-hmm,
from his point of view, 140 years.
mm-hmm.
So I didn't get quasi religious. I
Okay.
got more utilitarian.
Do you think that he and Bernard see the founders and the pact the same way in the end?
Yes, except that for Bernard, it's not pact; it's the order. But they're
Mhm.
both using these old texts
Mhm.
as the framework for their actions and the framework for right and wrong. So I don't think Bernard sees the pact the same way that Billings does. But if Bernard were to introduce Billings to the order in
Mhm.
some way, I think that could be very interesting, because these
Okay.
two documents serve the same purpose for
Right.
them.
Right. So yeah, obviously Billings doesn't know about the order, but it's interesting that he uses these exact words. He says, "If we don't respect the order of things, then it all falls apart."
Yeah,
So but to what extent do you think that's true? That you have to honor order to
I
keep
mean,
things going?
I always tend to come down on the side, in the debate between which is more important, order or justice. I always tend to come
Mhm.
down on the side of order,
Mm.
because justice can only come about in an ordered society. Outside of that, the only thing that everything would just everything just becomes might makes right. So justice is a product of order.
Do
me.
you want to guess my answer?
I would say you're going to say justice.
Yes, but I think it's just because when I think about, the side of order, then I think about how quickly that can slide into fascism. So I think obviously I don't want anarchy either. I think it is about the balance between the two, but I will err on the side of justice.
I'm going to say this is a very Remy Aubuchon topic to frame a discussion around. This is a topic he likes to deal with in his writing.
Okay, well there we go.
Yeah.
Um, so on the religious side of things, do you think we've seen any sort of religious behavior of any sort in the silo?
I mean, we have seen the funeral
Right.
rites, and I think to some extent there is an attempt to like venerate the founders, but not in a religious way. I think the model for that is more sort of like Kim Jong Un in North Korea, or Lenin in the Soviet Union. They're not
But
saying
but Kim Jong Un wants to be a religious figure.
he wants to be treated as a religious figure, but he doesn't actually claim to be like a supernatural.
Well, doesn't he?
Well, I guess, yeah. Yeah. You raise a good point, Elysia, because it's that kind of boundary between venerating historical figures and venerating legends. So yeah, there is something quasi-religious about the way people, not just Billings, but the silo in general, has been sort of taught to see the founders.
Yeah, and I also think about things about like swearing on the pact, the way that we would swear on a Bible in court. Which is kind of weird if you think about it, but
and I think it's interesting as well that the founders are undifferentiated. They are just the founders. There's no they're not talked about as individuals. They're just a collective.
Right. Like it's not a myth about, like Mary and George and Carl went,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So do you think that there could be more religiosity or less emerging as the crisis point, comes to more of a head?
I think that's interesting. I mean, Bernard will clearly use the founders and the mythology behind them if he thinks it's useful. We've already seen a bit of that. I think it will be my honest answer is I don't know, but I think if Bernard thinks it's useful, then he will use that. No doubt in my mind about that.
Yeah. So I have to say, this reminds me of a comic that I just read, the whole thing about, Billings thinking that he can get justice. It reminds me of a 1872 comic, Marvel. So, and it's set in the Wild West, and we have Captain America as the the sheriff of the town. And he has someone in his jail who has blown up or tried to blow up a dam because the dam was stealing water from his people, basically. And so Captain America thinks if I bring him to the judge, then they will hear this out in court and everyone will hear how this dam is hurting other people. And this is what they need. They need to be able to hear this in public. And then this is how we can solve the problem. Only it turns out that, the mayor of the town, which is Wilson Fisk, is laughing at him, literally. So just as, just as surely is suspecting in this. I don't know, just really, anyway, just a random thing. And yes, the 1872 comic is the basis of, or the inspiration for one of the What If episodes recently. And that's, why I was reading it recently.
Okay.
But it just reminded me, just the similarity of this story archetype that comes back. Yeah. It's just funny. Literally, it's about a sheriff who just believes in the system and then finds out like, oh, all right. Well, speaking of the system, because of the blockade, the Down Deep is running low on medicine and bandages and the like. And Martha, Harriet Walter, she asks a group led by Teddy Olatunji, who has come to her for help and advice, how they plan to get into medical supply. They want to break in and get new supplies, basically. And she's like, what, are you going to saw up through the floor again? And Teddy says they're going to go late when it's quiet in those chairs, quote unquote, Jules and Coop used on the generator. And when Knox, Shay McRae, asks Martha if she has a better plan, because she scoffs at theirs, she says they need to get McLean out of detention so that she can get them medical supplies as head of supply. Not to mention that McLean sacrificed herself for their sorry asses. But Knox points out that breaking Carla out of Fort Judicial is a lot more difficult than breaking into supply. So, yeah, what do you think? Why do you think that this group came to Martha to discuss these plans? What do you think they wanted from her in this moment?
I'm not sure they wanted anything from Walker apart from validation, because Walker seems to be like the wise old owl of mechanical.
Right.
Knox is clearly in charge, but he leans on Walker as a counselor, as as somebody who has been as somebody who they keep pointing out is older than the average citizen of the silo, and therefore has seen a lot and knows a lot about the silo and how it works. And I don't think they were looking for anything specific from Walker other than counsel, other than advice.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I have to note that Papa Nichols was there, even Ian Glenn. So he's gone full rebel now. He's team down deep to the max.
Yeah.
Do you think Juliette, Martha says Juliette would tell them they're all insane for going through with this. Do you think that she would? What do you think Juliette would say about her father being involved, for one?
No, I think Juliette would be very proud of Daddy Dr. Nichols. And I hope either in the last couple of episodes of this season or early next season, we get a reunion and an explanation of everything that's happened, because, well, for reasons we'll get into later on in the episode, Juliette really needs some good news right about now.
Oh, Juliette.
So yeah, no, I think she would be very proud of her dad.
Yeah.
And I would also think she'd call Walker an idiot, because Knox is absolutely right. I mean, the plan to sort of steal medical supplies is not straightforward, but any idea of breaking Carla out of Fort Judicial is just crazy talk. It's not going to happen.
Well, so I think old Juliette, who didn't know about the lies and the other silos, etc., I think that she would definitely be all for this plan. I mean, obviously she literally broke into supply herself before, so that's the reason why Bernard started out hating her, because she stole the good heat tape. But right now, I think, obviously, after what she found out from Solo, about, how Silo 17 ended and all that, I think that it would terrify her that everyone she loves is about to do something stupid and die. And I guess that's kind of what Martha's feeling right now, too. Like, this is before Bernard has approached her. So we're just talking about her getting into the frame of mind that she's in when she has that conversation with Bernard.
Yeah. I mean, I think Walker isn't thinking particularly straight at this point. She's so racked with guilt about what happened with Carla, both in the present, but also what happened 20 years ago to cause their marriage to break down. And I think
which we still don't really know.
We still don't know the details of. But all of this stuff is clearly churning around in her head. And so I don't think Martha's thinking particularly clearly in that. She isn't thinking particularly clearly in the entire episode, but certainly not in that particular moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's definitely this guilt and fear, and we make our worst decisions when we're racked with guilt and fear.
Yeah.
Do you think that, in the side of, it being too difficult to break out Carla, do you think Knox and co are being cold? Or do you get where they're coming from, or is it like a little from column A,
I think it's a little from column A, little from column B. I think Knox could have been a bit more gentle about sort of letting Walker down. On the other hand, Knox in particular, as the leader of the Down Deep has been under a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I may as well bring this up now because I think this is an issue not just with this episode but wider than this. How much time has passed, do we think, between the end of season 1 and where we are now?
I mean, I'm guessing maybe a couple weeks, not longer for sure.
Yeah, I'd say about. I was trying to work it out in my head, and I'd say somewhere between 2 and 3 weeks.
Okay. I think maybe even on the shorter end of that. But yeah, definitely under a
Yeah.
month. We haven't gotten that far. I think maybe even less than that, to be honest.
Yeah, I would. I don't know quite how, but I would like in the next 2 episodes if they could
Somebody to say, like, when
if they
she
could just
cleaned
point at
2 weeks ago.
yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, on the Carla question, I mean, to be fair, Martha says she sacrificed herself for all of our sorry asses. Like, I feel like she mostly sacrificed herself for Martha. Do you think she would have done the same if it were just Knox and Shirley who were at risk?
No.
No, I
No.
agree. I agree.
Yeah.
But and of course, yeah, none of these people care as much about Carla as Martha does because they broke up when Knox was still a kid. But
Yeah.
should they still be doing it just because it's Martha?
No, and I think at the end of this conversation, Shirley does sort of stay behind when the meeting's breaking up and go, we do understand how
Right.
much you care about Carla. Even though maybe they don't because they don't know the background to it.
Right.
But I like the more I see of Shirley as a character, the more I like her because I think of all the characters, she has got the most of all the characters. Yeah, of all the characters, I think she's got the most empathy with the people around her.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I love Shirley as a character, but I can see where Martha is probably feeling in this moment. Like she's scared for the people she cares about, and she's also feels like the people she cares about have turned their backs on her a bit.
Like people are always coming to ask her for stuff or advice or support, and now Juliette isn't there. She kind of has nobody to confide in.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so Martha tells them they're all going to get themselves killed or arrested, and for what? Then they're going to be worse off than before, and she's done listening to them, and she kicks them out of her workshop. And just then, a message appears on her computer, summoning her to fix a pump. And on her way up, Shirley catches up to her to ask where she's going, and she says, groundwater removal called. The pump on 90 isn't working. She's guaranteed safe passage. And Shirley points out that they shut down computer messaging, and it's clearly a trap. So I don't know. Do you think Walker does already have an idea that this pump fixing thing isn't quite legit?
Yeah, I think she does. I don't think she knows that it's going to be Bernard that's going to be waiting for her, but I think she's got an inkling that this is somebody trying to pass a message.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think she's desperate for information, and at this point, like, she doesn't want to do their plan about liberating the medical supplies. She wants to feel like she's doing something for Carla, and she did turn on that camera.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah. But guaranteed safe passage, that means that judicial/IT must have approved. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I mean, also, given what we've seen in Silo 17, I can see why you would call issues around making sure the pumps work. Why you would call that as neutral because
Right.
that really is vital to the survival of the entire silo. So,
Right.
yeah.
It is something I have to say that Juliette talks about being a regular part of her work in the book. It's
Okay.
maintaining the pumps and making sure, yeah. Because groundwater will seep up. But and Martha makes two excellent points about, Shirley saying she's walking into a trap. She says, well, if they throw me into a cell, maybe they'll put me in with Carla, and at least I'll have a few hours away from all of you and your stupid plans. Oh, Martha.
Oh, Martha.
All right. This is a good place to take a quick pause. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the great book hunt and backlash. Okay, so Lucas Kyle, Avinash, has the keys to Meadows' apartment and a brand new bright blue shadow to the head of IT badge, and he's not going to be stopped by two judicial goons, which is honestly what they're credited as at the end. They're judicial goons, Tyler and Jesse, played by James Payton and Anchor Ball. And Lucas pulls rank and kicks them out so he can search the apartment. And yeah, they said Judge Sims ordered us to pack everything up and bring it back to judicial. And yeah, Sims is playing with fire because Sims knows of all people and places that he's going to take all of Judge Meadows' belongings back to judicial. That's fighting words.
Yeah, he's sending Bernard a not too subtle message.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I do like the judicial goons. That was us being nice. You wanted to go the other way, and it's like, okay, back off. Back off.
Yeah. I don't blame Lucas for being a dick back in this circumstance. I don't like his behavior later, but in this case, he sends him a cold, well, I don't know what you're going to tell him. Like, boom.
Yeah, boom.
Yeah. I mean, they are like really unnecessarily asshole-ish.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Is there anything else Lucas could have done with these two other than pulling rank?
No, and like I say, I think Lucas quite enjoyed pulling. You know, because Lucas, like he says later on, he's a kid from the lower mids. He's probably been bullied by judicial all his life, as most people in the silo. And I think he got a moment of great satisfaction from being able to flash his new blue IT badge and go, jog on, basically.
Yeah. Head of IT even, or
Head
Shadow
of IT.
too. Well, I loved the exchange where one of the goons says, it's blue, and the other one says, I know color. So like, yeah, these two went to the Amundsen School of Judicial Gooning.
Also, like, Lucas's new outfit. Like, clearly there is like a uniform for the head of IT, because it's not the full suit that Bernard wears, but like everything is the same color, same sort of texture, same sort of cut.
Right.
So I don't know whether that's a story element or whether that's just the costume department going, we want you to see that this person is in IT.
I think it's a book nod. They wear silver at IT. The people in those positions in IT in the book wear silver.
Okay.
But yeah, not overall keen on Lucas's power trip later in the episode, but we'll talk about that and how he gets called out because it's not him. But I did think about, like you said, it was cute of Billings to put on his tough side a few episodes ago. And I didn't agree with you about Billings then. I thought Billings really did pull it off. But in this episode, I was like, oh, Lucas, just stop, honey. This isn't you. So with the judicial goons gone, Lucas starts looking through the books to see if the book cipher works on any of them, and none of them are working out. So he starts to wonder if Salvador Quinn, the head of IT during that rebellion 140 years ago, who wrote this code that Lucas is trying to crack, if he might have given the book he needs to a member of his own family. So Lucas looks up his descendants. And yeah, then we see also, and Lucas learns that his new ID badge gives him special privileges in searching the silo computer system. So now he would be able to open that hard drive that Juliette wanted his help with last season. Do you think if she brought the hard drive to him now and asked for help, he would help her?
That is a very good question.
Honestly, I'm not sure either. I think I have different answers for the book Lucas versus TV Lucas on this.
I mean, obviously, I can only speak to TV Lucas, but I think the answer is probably no. Because I think Lucas has bought into the idea that whatever is in this Salvador Quinn diary book is like of existential peril to the silo. So even if he doesn't, this is the thing. Even if he doesn't like Bernard on a personal level, I think his curiosity and his drive to know how things work and why they work is pulling him inexorably into the world of IT, into Bernard's world. And that's why I say I think this episode in a lot of ways is about like Lucas's fall as a character. Now it doesn't mean he falls to Bernard's level, or that he's not gonna redeem himself at some point in the future. But I don't think curiosity's gonna get Lucas killed, but it might turn him into a very different person.
Where are you putting him on the Juliette to Bernard scale now?
On the Simpsons scale, the Juliette.
I mean, are we still calling it Simstar? But
yeah. I mean, I think we've got to honor the tradition now. Going back to our Christmas episodes, this is our version of Dead as a Doornail. So I would put him at the moment 7 on the Juliette to Simpsons scale.
Okay. All right. I don't know. I guess I'm putting him in the middle, but I think the point you make about his curiosity is, in addition to whatever feelings he had for Juliette, or we don't really get a sense of what he thinks about her now. Well, okay, maybe a little sense later I'll bring up, but I think his curiosity would drive him to help her if he could, because he would want to know what was on that hard drive if he weren't already being roped into decoding it.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting when he did the search on the computer, a bunch of names popped up, but he only wrote down the one name, Terrence Penbrook,
yes!
7318.
Yeah, I just thought that was, I think Silo is pretty good at avoiding this, but I just took that as like massive plot armor is the wrong word, but like a plot device. Because yeah, there was like,
it's like hand waving.
Yeah, it was a bit hand wavy because there were at least a dozen names on that screen.
But maybe the others weren't as direct descendants or something. I don't know.
Possibly, but they didn't seem to be organized.
Right. And how did he know?
Yeah. It doesn't really matter. We can let them get away with a bit of hand waving from time to time.
Well, Sims, Common, meanwhile, is pissed that Lucas Kyle now has the authority to send his men who were packing up Meadows' apartment away, and he's taking it out on poor Amundsen, Christian Ochoa, Lavernia. Since Bernard doesn't tell Sims what he's up to anymore, Sims wants Amundsen to give him this intel, but Bernard doesn't trust Stapler Guy with that information either, and Amundsen says he wouldn't be able to tell him anyway. So, people don't give Sims the proper credit for being a manipulator that he is. I mean, he's not at his wife's level. But I think if they got on the same page, people better watch out. But just, it's a subtle way that he frames things to Amundsen. Like, he's like, that little shit you and I sent to the mine. So this is a way of saying, you and I in this thing together, us versus him, just framing it in this way of like, association between us, distance from third party that I want you to get intel on.
Yeah, and you can tell throughout this entire scene, Amundsen is not comfortable. Now that's partly because Sims gets right up in his face, like physically right up in his face. He's all in his personal space. But I think you're right as well. They've got a shared history that Sims can call back to. But I actually, for all the fun we make of Amundsen, the Stapler incident, I actually thought he stood his ground against Sims. Remarkably well, because he's not having any of this. Because like Sims goes on, I am Judge Sims. You answer, and it's like, yeah, when Meadows was judged, did you answer to her except on paper? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Amundsen may not be the sharpest tool in the box, but he does know his role, and he knows, he is in a way just as loyal to the idea of the pact as Billings, arguably more so in a literal sense, because like Amundsen, whatever relationship he had with Sims, that is irrelevant to him in that moment. He's a chain of command guy.
I do see a bit of a parallel between him and Lukas this episode in the sense that they're both getting a little cocky in their new roles, their new
Yes.
greater,
Yeah.
him as head of judicial security, Lukas as shadow to the head of IT. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, Lukas would theoretically be his boss one day,
His
by the way.
boss, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do think Amundsen has maybe started to underestimate Mr. Sims at this point anyway. We'll talk about Mrs. Sims in a
Well,
bit.
yeah. Yeah,
But
this is very much a family Sims effort. Yeah.
but yeah, the way the like Amundsen just gives Sims this like smug nod and walks away. I'm like, ooh, I don't know if you should do that. Yeah. Hmm. So Lucas, meanwhile, goes to see Terence Pembroke, played by Stuart Milligan, and his sheep farming family. His daughter in law, Jocelyn, Diana Bermudez, shuts the door in his face, telling Lucas to tell his boss they'll have their wool before the next cleaning, pretending not to know the name Salvador Quinn, and lying about her father in law's whereabouts. Lucas points out that Terence is a direct descendant of Salvador Quinn, and Terence himself pipes up to ask who's at the door before also attempting to shut it in his face. Lucas flashes his bright blue badge again and makes some vague threats about official interrogations, and they let Lucas in. Lucas tells him he's looking for books, and he thinks they have it. They, of course, play dumb. All the books were destroyed in the rebellion, of course, they say, and they've long since disassociated with the name Salvador Quinn, which brought shame on the family. Lucas threatens a judicial search team and says he'll leave them to do a more thorough search to prevent that. He'll get a coffee and be back. But when Lucas walks out, Terence follows Lucas into the alley and stops him with some advice. Lucas is trying too hard to be a tough guy, and he's not pulling it off. So, the Pembrokes, we learn they make wool for the cleanings, and they've been doing it 5 generations since the whole Quinn incident. There's 5 generations, including the young one there, who looks like, I don't know, he looks like he's at least in his 20s. Brandon, played by Brandon Marinas. And apparently this making wool for the cleanings is to atone for what Salvador Quinn did. I guess this makes sense.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that making the wool is seen as a punishment. It's seen as like the lowest of the low. And it did sort of remind me of something I read once, that people who were hangmen, that tended to be passed as a profession from father to son on down, because it wasn't a profession that people wanted to do for obvious reasons. So it tended to stick in particular families, because the people that make the wool they're not executioners, but they kind of are involved in the process of execution.
Yeah, no, I guess that's true. If they're making wools for the cleanings, and apparently they are skilled wool workers in general, because they also make blankets mostly for up toppers. So that means like they must be the best in their craft, right?
Yeah, yeah. And they've got like a loom that you can see in the background.
Yeah, we see Brandon working at the loom. Yeah. And, so I was thinking like that Lucas, he tries to strong arm these people because he learned from his last interaction with the judicial goons that pulling rank gets things done. But obviously with this family, it kind of backfires and they're actually less inclined to help him at first, which I mean, I'm glad because he gets called out and has to think about it. But what do you think the difference is between this family and the judicial goons?
Well, I think obviously, if they're making the wool for the cleanings, they've had a lot of experience dealing with people from judicial.
Hmm.
So they're not easily intimidated.
But the people in judicial have a lot of experience dealing with people from judicial, right? So
That's true. And I think as well, they kind of, the point that both the father and the daughter-in-law make is that they're kind of social pariahs in the silo anyway. So, I guess they're sort of, they are, no, not I guess, they are kind of sort of very protective and very sort of insular.
Right.
So I don't think they're not gonna take any guff. They're not gonna take any guff from anybody. I did think the little comment about the up toppers was interesting because it's another little hint of like the way in which like class tension is like shot through the
Mm-hmm.
entire like society of the silo,
Mm-hmm.
because like the people in
Yeah.
the up top get the good blankets.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if, that pride and being like, "Oh, we sell to the up toppers mostly."
yeah,
Um, that also gives them. I think I tend to notice that the people who are most easily bullied are the people who have insecurities, where they think I have to go along with what they're saying or else I'm valued less or else I'm excluded or, things will be worse for me. Well, so Lucas reports back to Bernard that the family was no help, saying Quinn's legacy of failure continues. And Bernard says Quinn wasn't a failure, which confuses Lucas because they've all been taught that Quinn let the rebels erase the servers and burn the books. Bernard says that was a cover story. Quinn actually saved the silo. At that point, they were having a rebellion every 20-ish years, each a risk that someone would open the airlock and kill them all. So Quinn thought that if they could forget they were unhappy, forget about the rebellions, sever the silo from its history, they could achieve a lasting peace again. So he cut off access to the servers and the books, said the rebels destroyed them, and put a chemical compound in the water that dulled people's memories over the course of years until they forgot about their past collectively, leading to 140 years of peace. So the chemical compound in the water, do you think that's the same thing that they were giving shots of to people to make
yeah.
them forget recent events?
I assume it was. I assume it was. Now the question that popped into my mind was, okay, he severed the silo from the servers and the books. Did he also sever Silo 18 from the rest of the silos?
Uh, hmm. Okay. Okay. Um, yeah, and it is interesting to note that we were told in the first season, just like all of the Silazans were told, that they had, those were destroyed. The hard drives and the books and the servers and all that. And in fact, they still exist. They're just cut off from public access. So that does make me wonder, like, Solo asked Juliette at one point if she was allowed to read growing up, and she said no. And he's like, "Oh, that's too bad." I wonder if, for example, Solo was allowed to read in Silo 17 or other silos
Yeah,
out there.
yeah, yeah. I wonder that. I wonder that too. And is it just are the servers treated the same? Are the servers treated the same way as the legacy, i.e., that only the head of IT and their shadow can access them, or are they open to a slightly wider circle of people within IT? Because I imagine it would be the latter, because there's probably stuff related to the design and operation of the silo on those servers that other people, even if they don't have access to like the complete record, might need to know to keep the silo running.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously they use the computers, but we see that only Lucas and Bernard get full access to everything on them.
Yeah.
I do think it was rather shitty of Lucas to say that the family is no help. Quinn's legacy of failure continues. Like, what? No, it was you who failed to treat them like people, Lucas. Hashtag, where's my Lucas?
The poor guy's just frustrated. There's a puzzle and he's this close to solving it.
But where's that goofball energy from when he was courting Juliette in season one? Can you tell me corny things about smiles?
Yes, well,
Oh.
he's becoming Darth Lucas.
Well, speaking of the Darth title, Camille, played by Alexandria Riley, she later approaches Amundsen in the cafeteria, ready to take him on a little guilt trip down memory lane to the time Amundsen and his now wife came over for dinner. a rare privilege when Rob was boss, and a first. She gently reminds him he's about to have a child, but she's afraid for their children in the current political climate of the silo. She agrees with Amundsen that the, as he puts it, greasers from the down deep aren't making anything easier, but the source of the issues is really IT. Like, what's up with the miner being made shadow of the head there? People up and down the silo are having doubts, she says. Rob just wants to help the silo, preventing them all from dying. He needs Amundsen to find out what Lukas is up to. Just this one thing, she says. That's all he's asking. After all, none of them swore their oaths to Bernard. They swore their oaths to the silo. Amundsen walks away without making any commitments.
I've got to say, like, did it strike you that this is not Camille at her best? This is like some B tier emotional manipulation.
Yeah, you think?
Yeah, it was very obvious. It was very sort of
Oh, I
laying
thought
it
the
on
opposite.
thick. Okay.
Oh, because I mean, I think she understands that different people need to be manipulated differently, and Amundsen needs the honey.
Okay.
But she was reminding me of the Wheel of Time has there's a group of bad guys there called the Forsaken, and my favorite Forsaken, her saying is softly, softly from the shadows. And Camille is being very Mogedian, softly, softly from the shadows. But yeah, I mean, the way she's like menacingly like blocking his escape and stuff, like, oh, I'm just gonna nice you to death, but you're not getting away from me.
Yeah, and I mean, who am I to argue? Because it works. Amundsen later in the episode does do what she was asking him to do, but I thought she would, and let's face it, this is Amundsen, so maybe subtlety is not the way to go. But I thought this was laying it on a little bit thick. Yeah.
I love the detail that Camille drinks black coffee. I drink my coffee black too. What about you?
I don't drink very much. I don't really drink coffee.
No. Okay. Fair. Tea?
Tea, yeah, with milk.
With milk. Okay. Amundsen, apparently his wife's name is Marcy. I wonder if we're ever going to meet Marcy.
I would love to meet Mrs. Amundsen because
I'm curious. I have questions.
What must that relationship be like?
I mean, he's a good-looking guy. That's, and I'm sure.
I suppose he's very sort of square-jawed.
He's just a fly in the spider's web. Okay, so Amundsen, he's more afraid of Bernard than he is of Rob. But is he more afraid of Bernard than he is of Camille?
Based on the evidence of this episode, you'd have to say no.
Yeah.
Because he does do what Camille asks him to do.
Right. He wasn't about to listen to Rob, but yeah. Camille, yeah. Mm-hmm. I was wondering though, will it ever be just one thing with favors from the family Sims? But then I was also thinking about Bernard later with Martha, and I'm like, Bernard's worse. Again, Bernard's worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so Sims later gets a message from Amundsen out of the blue, who says he's thinking of the time Sims came to his father's funeral, and he thinks about that apple tree planted on his grave. So basically, the translation of this is, for Auld Lang Syne, he'll do this one favor, just meet him by the apple tree on his father's grave. So Rob goes to meet him, and Amundsen tells him he ran a track and trace on Lukas, and that after Lukas left Meadows' apartment, he went to go see someone in the lower mids, a Terence Pembroke, and he was looking for a book that belonged to Salvador Quinn, and he went to see Bernard. But that's it. He's done helping Sims behind Bernard's back if Sims would kindly tell his wife to stand down. So I get the sense Sims probably didn't know Camille went to see Amundsen. How do you think Sims feels about that this time?
This is not Camille going behind Rob's back. This is Camille working towards the same end.
Right.
So I don't think Judge Sims is going to be too annoyed. I think it might if this sort of pattern where Camille succeeds and he fails, sort of keeps up, that might start to rankle a little bit after a while. But I think for now, we're okay.
Yeah. Yeah. We also learned that Amundsen's father was a nasty bastard who now feeds bitter apples. Do you think Amundsen Sr. also works in judicial?
I think he did work in judicial, yeah.
Yeah. I do wonder, I guess it's probably the same as in the books where often people just pass down their jobs to their children, basically. Like you're saying with the executioners, but in
Yeah.
general. No. When he says he tracked and traced Lukas, do we think that just means with the cameras? Or is he like tagged somewhere? Seems like he also could hear what he was saying because he knew about the books
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah. So possibly with the cameras and then having a listener stand like discreetly by the entrance of them. But no, because if they were
I
doing
think
that,
the
they
cameras
would have
just have
noticed.
sound.
Yeah. But here's the interesting thing.
Well, we know that cameras have sound because we saw George recorded on them. Or didn't he speak? Anyway, yeah, sorry.
But here's the interesting thing. What happens when Bernard finds out he's done that? Because Bernard didn't ask him to do it.
Will Bernard find out?
Who knows?
Only if
might.
Sims tells him, right?
Well, no, because maybe Bernard, if he's using the cameras, then presumably Bernard has access to the metadata of who's looking at what camera when.
If he goes to look at that, or
Yeah.
if they record that. Yeah, it's a good question. Or did he ask people in the watcher's room to look? I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Although, so for all the making fun of Amundsen for being dumb we do, by the way, he did realize that Lukas doesn't actually know what he's looking for, so he's not completely clueless.
Yeah, and now he's a judicial goon, but he's a slightly higher class of. He's a grade A. He's a grade A goon. The guys before were like grade B, maybe grade C goons.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So Lukas, he goes back to the Pembroke family to apologize for his earlier behavior and ask for help the nice way. And he says he's from the lower mids like them and locked into this new high status job. He admits he was getting too big for his britches, but Salvador Quinn, their ancestor, really was something special, a hero who saved the silo, though he can't say how or why. Jocelyn says Judge Meadows said the same when she came to see them. What seems to have been, I'm guessing, 25 years ago. It was before Brandon was born, at least, before she became judge. And she was looking for books, like Lukas, and said they wouldn't get into trouble if they were relics. She would exchange 2 books she had for one of theirs, Salvador's copy of the Pact. So yay, collecting my internet points. Cha-ching.
Cha-ching. But I'm not sure the timeline of that adds up because Jocelyn would have been a tiny. Jocelyn would have been
so
a very
I
young.
think Jocelyn is Brandon's mother. So
yeah.
So if Brandon's about 20, Jocelyn's probably in her 40s. I think that tracks.
Okay. I thought Jocelyn looks a little bit younger than that, but yeah.
She does look young, yeah. Work. At first I thought she could have been his wife, but then when the way they were talking, I was like, no, she's his mother.
Yeah.
Or, mother. And then his father is the son of Terrence.
Yeah.
But his father wasn't there for some reason.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess we're getting closer to an answer as to where Meadows disappeared to for 4 days all those years ago and yes. Why at least.
Yes. I mean, obviously it doesn't account for the whole 4 days, but it accounts for a portion of it. By the way, I looked at this several times and I couldn't work it out. Do you have any idea what the book was that Meadows traded for the Pact?
No, there were 2 of them, but we never get a good look. And then, the first time I watched, I thought Lukas took them when he left. I was like, Dick, that's not the book you need now. But the AD set me straight, the audio description, the second time I watched, he left those books behind. So I'm like, okay.
Because I watched that scene like multiple times and I couldn't decipher what those books were.
I paused and I tried like just inching through and they do not show us what books they are. but let's assume, I don't know, not the Wizard of Oz, obviously.
Not
She
the-
kept that
anyway,
one, but like,
if it was important, they would have. If it was important, they
right,
would have let us know.
right. Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe it's, what was it? Solo was really into 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Maybe it's that.
yeah.
Um, and Jocelyn, she asks if it's true, as Lucas is leaving, she asks if it's true Meadows was murdered by a couple of mechanicals. And Lucas, he's non-committal about it, which I'm thankful for. And he says, that's what people are saying, but I don't know. And he sounds doubtful to me. Do you think he's thinking about Juliette when he kind of half defends her people like this?
Yeah, and also, like, he may be sort of inching towards Bernard's world, but he's not been completely IT brained yet.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, yeah, he's not like absorbed Bernard's worldview. And yeah, I think he was partially thinking about Juliette in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, just to backtrack slightly.
Uh-huh.
See, I think you think that speech is Lucas being genuine. I'm a bit more cynical about it. I think
Okay.
I think that's him realizing he's not going to get what he wants by threatening
Mm-hmm.
them. And so I think it is just a case of, like I said earlier, him realizing that he's going to catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. Because that speech to me sounded practiced. It sounded rehearsed. It didn't sound like something Lucas would spontaneously say.
Okay, you think? Why? He was quite smooth when we saw him in season 1 talking to Juliette and stuff.
Yeah, but this like the whole sort of way it was set up of him appealing to class solidarity. Yeah, no, it just struck me as a memory. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just being too cynical. But it struck me as like a memorized, calculated speech rather than him being genuine.
Okay. Okay. Well, Lucas goes back to Meadows' apartment, finds the copy of the pact that he just looked over on his previous visit, and he looks inside the cover, and sure enough, it's signed Salvador Quinn. Using the code and page 77 of that book gets him nowhere until he notices that some of the letters on that page are underlined. When he strings them together, it tells him to proceed 20 paces forward plus 2, so he turns 22 pages forward to page 99. And then he can use the code to give him something that's not gibberish. And he finds the message: if you've gotten this far, you already know the game is rigged. So I guess that's why I was wondering at first, like, why does it have to be that version of the pact? Aren't they all the same? But I guess it's because Salvador underlined those letters on page
Yeah.
77 himself. And it's a start of a sort of scavenger hunt for his own family. And now we've got a new clue. So the new clue: if you've gotten this far, you already know the game is rigged. Where do we think the scavenger hunt's going to lead our Lucas next?
I have no idea. But what's interesting is if what Bernard is saying is the whole truth about Salvador Quinn, and I don't think that it is because of what I'm about to say next. Why
Okay.
would you go to all that trouble of cutting off the citizens of the silo from their own history and then drugging them to make them forget their own
Mm-hmm.
recent past,
Mm-hmm.
and then leave a message behind you
Right.
for people to find?
Right.
Like, there is clear, like, I'm not saying what Bernard said isn't accurate, but it's clearly not the whole story.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it were, then this whole code thing makes no sense.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you make a good point. And then part of me wonders, in that case, what if he left the message behind for himself because
Yes.
he knew he was going to lose his memory?
Yeah, because he was drinking the same water as everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. As far as where Lucas will physically go next, I have an idea from the trailer, but we promise not to talk about the trailer during these episodes anymore. So just people who've watched the trailer, yeah, I don't know, thinking about that. Or people who listen to our breakdown, at least, I should say.
Yeah.
Um, so Sims walks up as Lucas is leaving Meadows' apartment and proves Terrence Pembroke's point about what real menace looks like. But I'm Bernard's shadow doesn't seem to work on Sims. And Sims pulls out the pact from Salvador Quinn, only he doesn't look inside. And Lukas plays dumb and says he was just playing fetch and he doesn't know what it's for. And he implies that, maybe it's just because it's a personal item of Mary's and Bernard wants it as a keepsake or something. And so Sims decides it's time to play good cop with Lukas. And he warns Lukas that Bernard will turn on him once he gets what he needs from him. And he tells Lukas that when he needs a friend, sometime soon, Sims can be that friend to him. And it'd be a shame if something happened to Lucas's pretty little face and all that.
But I don't think that's true. I don't think Bernard will turn on Lukas because the fact is Bernard needs a shadow.
Yeah.
He needs ultimately he is going to have to hand over the knowledge that IT, the head of IT possesses to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And people with the necessary intelligence and imagination that he's talked about in earlier episodes, don't grow on trees in the silo because they're living in a society that, for all sorts of reasons that we've talked about really since episode 1, season 1, discourages people from asking questions.
Right.
And so, it's taken Bernard 25 years to find Lukas, from the point at which Mary Meadows stopped being a shadow. It's taken him 25 years to find somebody that he thinks can plausibly do that role. And Bernard's he's not ancient, but he's not a young guy. He's not a young guy anymore. So he is going to have to
dangerous things afoot. Yeah.
Yeah, he is going to have to hand the torch on to somebody, and I don't think he doesn't have the same feelings for Lukas that he did for Mary, obviously. But I think he kind of likes Lukas, or at the very least, he respects him.
Mm-hmm. No, I think you're right about all that, but at the same time, we saw with Mary someone who he had more than respect for, it seems. And he was willing to kill her when he got too scared. And we've seen this behavior with Bernard. He'll destroy something out of fear before he even answers the questions that, gets the answers to questions that hard drive or that person or whatever might have. So I think you're right, but I think that he could short-sightedly turn on Lukas because.
But this is the thing. I think Lukas has the intelligence and the imagination that Mary Meadows has, but he doesn't have the courage that she did.
She had the most backbone out of anyone in the silo, pretty much, except Juliette.
And one of the things we know about Lukas is he is a survivor.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of one of his, that's one of the cornerstones of his character in the show.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so what do you think Lukas is thinking about Bernard and Sims at this moment? Who do you think he trusts less right now?
Oh, Sims.
Yeah, I guess.
Sims.
Yeah, he has no reason to. He's just like, all you've ever done is yell at me, and now suddenly you're going to be my friend.
And also, when Sims does your mother is a nurse in the hospice on 86, it's like, if I was Lukas in that moment, I would just have turned around and gone, I'm the shadow to the head of IT.
That would have been the wrong move with Sims, though.
I could do very nasty things to you. I could do very.
I mean, he tried that on Sims and it didn't work. That was the first thing he tried. I'm Bernard Shadow, and Sims is like, okay, Pipsqueak, give me that book. I'll give you your lunch money.
But it's like, yeah, you may be the bigger guy, Sims, but you see, this is why I think Sims. This is why I think Robert Sims is heading for a fall, because he's still acting like he's the head of judicial. He's still acting like he is. Pardon?
On paper, he is.
On paper, he is, but in practice, he is. He's not. He hasn't got it through his head yet that he is a figurehead, and that actually, he's just able to manipulate, because he isn't able to manipulate Amundsen. It's Camille that does that. And Sims has not got it through his head yet that he doesn't actually have power anymore.
Yeah.
He's
Well,
somebody
I
that's,
mean,
yeah.
I think he has a good point in that, in something that Camille was gunning for before she decided to switch sides and be like, not Bernard. But he, because he has power on paper, he can exercise that to a certain degree and get away with it. It's just about butting heads with Bernard. But I think Lukas is smart enough. Sims is straight out, like, Sims did not respond to his first initial, like, I'm the shadow of Bernard. And he's basically like, your mom works in hospice care, huh? Be real shame if she had to have you as a patient. Have her own son as a patient. Like, damn.
Yeah.
And I think Lukas realizes that by trying to pull rank in that situation, it just puts him in more physical danger with this particular person who is especially disinclined
Yeah.
to hate that. He doesn't even understand why Sims hates that Lukas has this job that he wants. He doesn't even know that part.
Let's put it this way: if I'm the shadow to the head of IT, and Sims comes and does that to me, I'm putting, I'm making sure that I'm paying very close attention to where Anthony Sims, the son, is, at all times. Because you threaten me. You threaten me.
I'm not threatening your son.
I have a good deal more power.
Child, even if he
I have
is
a good
growing
deal
up to
more
be
power
like
than
his
you
father.
do right now.
Oh, I'm not threatening somebody's kid. I can't. And that's, well, that's why I would end up like Mary Meadows. But I do, so Sims, he says to Lukas, Bernard will always be 4 moves ahead of you. But I think that is way more true of Sims than it is for Lukas.
Yeah. Because this is the other thing. I think Robert Sims, he overestimates his own intelligence.
Right. And he doesn't even know what Lukas is made of. I can understand from his perspective. He's like, why the hell would you make that random guy who was supposed to go to the mines your shadow? And Bernard says about curiosity, but I think you can't truly understand something that you never really had yourself.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this is a good moment to pause. And when we come back, we're going to talk about Billing's big secret, Bernard's big bad blackmail, and what's going on in Silo 17. Be right back. All right. So Kathleen, Caitlin Zaz, is still nursing Patrick, Rick Gomez, back to health, and she's making him drink some disgusting concoction. And I was frustrated she didn't tell us what this quote unquote old recipe passed down from generation to generation since maybe before, the before times. She didn't tell us what it is. Do you think it's something we'd recognize? Like, I don't know.
Like something like a sort of very primitive antibiotic or something like that?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Why not just tell us what it is, but some bitter concoction. We know she does the herbs.
I was it tastes like my brother's armpit. I'm not going to ask how you know what your brother's armpit tastes like.
It tastes different from his own armpit? Anyway. Patrick says Kathleen and Paul sure do seem to know a lot about the before times, with Paul showing him that page from the Georgia guidebook and all with the pictures of the mountains. And he asks her what she thought of it, and she pretends to have seen it, but Patrick doesn't look fooled. And when Paul gets home, Kathleen is dripping with disappointment. She asks her husband about the page. How could he tell someone else a secret he would keep from her for any reason? He can't protect her. They're a family, and they need to share all their secrets. She pushes him to show her the page, and they cry over the lost world of before together. So, yeah, just saying, Kathleen is 100% right here. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. But when Patrick says, you and your husband know a lot about the before times, you really want to sound effect play over the top of that. Because, like, he's not doing it on purpose. Like, he assumes that she's seen the page.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, like you say, he's not at all, like, convinced that she has, but it's like, oh, I've said more than I should.
Right. Yeah.
But also, Caitlin Zaz definitely gets like the acting MVP for this episode for that scene and the one that follows. There are so many of these characters that are not the main characters, but they give so much depth to the show, and they are like proper characters. They're not just NPCs that stuff happens to advance the plot. I think this is like a real strength of the writing of Silo, and I presume the book as well, because it would have to be based on something. But I love the fact that all these side characters feel real, even though they're not they're not the center of the action.
I mean, yeah, the book is like the show. It's an ensemble story, but I do think that one thing where the show is really added is a lot of these side characters. Like Billings, Paul, well, he's called Peter Billings in the book, but I guess they changed it because they didn't want Peter Nichols and Peter Billings. But anyway, Billings is in the book, but we don't know about his home life. So they really, and the same with Sims. So they've really added a lot to the main characters by giving these fully fleshed out other characters in their orbits and, all these interactions. I also think it's really interesting to compare, so we recently had where Sims was confronting his wife about similar things, about going behind his back and lying to him about something. And you can just see the response between them, the differences in the response between the way Paul responds to Kathleen and Camille responds to Rob, and I can't help but feel that Paul and Kathleen actually do have a more solid foundation, which is not what I thought about their relationship last season. So, especially in the back half of the season, they've really turned around my perception of Kathleen and their relationship.
Okay.
Well, moving on to the big bad Bernard and his blackmail. So at the beginning of the episode, there was this tiny scene where Bernard, Tim Robbins, of course, is skulking around the silo and he ducks into a utilities closet and we never see where that leads him. So I have the feeling like there might be some secret way to get around. Like this is how he secretly gets to the pump room later or something. What do you think the deal is with that utilities closet? Or does that just lead to the watcher room from another place?
I think that just leads to the watcher room from another place.
I don't know. I'm curious. We'll see. But yeah, later Bernard turns up in that pump room on 90 that Walker was summoned to fix, and it turns out it didn't really need fixing after all. Bernard says she turned her camera on, so she must want to see him. Martha says it was a mistake, and Bernard says he was hoping they could negotiate. He says, "Yeah, I heard you wanted to see me. I've been assuming that audio does work in the cameras, and I think this is confirmation. I think we got a couple pieces of confirmation for this episode. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it does.
Bernard tells Martha McLean is stubborn, but emphasizes her age and fertility. And Martha calls him out. He must be really desperate for information to be dicking around with two old ladies like this. And Bernard recites his mantra. I'm trying to save the silo, and I'm forced to go to any lengths to do it. He says Mechanical is going to get them all killed, and he'll torture the hell out of Carla before he lets that happen, unless Martha becomes a spy for him. So, Luke, now you get your internet points. You totally called this.
Yeah, I take no pleasure. I take no pleasure in this. Although this is, cause I actually think this whole scene moves Bernard possibly off the end of the Sims nerd scale. We're gonna have to
He's not even on it himself.
recalibrate the Sims nerd scale, because is it just me, or is Bernard taking like, there is something sadistic about the way Bernard is doing this. Like, yes, he is trying to save the silo from his point of view, but I think he's also quite enjoying himself. And that's a side to Bernard I don't think we've seen before. And I think it's possibly because, like Walker is, Walker is not somebody who is easily intimidated.
No.
And because, like, Bernard is used to walking through life kind of automatically intimidating everybody around him, just by
Right.
who he is. So I think when he can intimidate somebody like Walker, who is not naturally intimidated by him,
Mm-hmm.
I think he kind of gets off on that.
Yeah.
But also, like, I know this is Bernard, and I know this is his inability to think outside the order, and I know it's like trying to imagine a color you've never seen. But like, what evidence does he have that mechanical are going to get them all
Yeah.
killed? This is not.
Right.
This is not Silo 17. No one has said anything about opening the airlock.
Exactly.
No one has
Exactly.
said anything about opening the airlock. Mechanical just want to be treated with a little bit of respect.
Yeah. Yeah. Like if he just released Carla, dropped the charges against Shirley and Knox, although I guess how could he do that without admitting that he framed them? But if he could finagle a way to do that, he's come up with crazier things, and then he just let them have regular supplies again. Wouldn't that just calm down this brewing rebellion?
Yes, like, he is creating the thing he says he's trying to avoid.
Yeah. And I guess that happens a lot, though, in real life, though, don't you think?
Yeah, but on some level, Bernard is too smart of a guy to, on some level, not realize that actually no one has said anything about opening the airlock. No one has said the only person that put the idea in people's heads of people going outside is Bernard when he talks about the better tape.
Right.
So I mean, I think from Bernard's point of view, as this goes on, this is less and less. This idea that he is doing it for the good of the silo is less and less plausible. Even if you accept his own like framing of the situation, this is more and more about I, Bernard Holland, want to be in charge, and I don't like it when other people don't like it when I'm in charge.
Yeah. But I think there is also an aspect. I think you're right, but I think there's also an aspect of, like I need to be in charge because nobody else gets it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so Martha seems to agree to the blackmail, and presumably off screen, she gives him information about the planned medical supply break in. And in return, Martha gets to see Carla. She literally gets a glimpse of her unresponsive ex wife through a slot in a door. And Bernard is now extending the agreement that Martha made to give her team up. He says if she wants to keep Carla alive, Martha will continue to spy for him in the down deep, and she reluctantly, angrily agrees. And he says others will be watching her to make sure she does this. And she's expected to keep her camera on and stay in her workshop. So, yeah, now it's like Martha's being forced back into the agoraphobia.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I do wonder if, now Martha at least has gotten to see where Carla is, and she has like an idea of the layout of judicial. I wonder if that could be useful information in the future.
Possibly, yes.
Bernard says he'll reunite Martha and Carla after the issues have quieted down if she cooperates. What's the percentage chance that Bernard actually means this?
Oh, 0.00000 repeating to like the nth degree.
I feel like he even had this like shitty, smug little smile when he said it too.
And
Like,
the thing is, I am 99% sure that Martha knows that.
yeah. But that 1% chance that he, in her mind that it could mean it, or at least she just has to buy time. But then my question is like, I feel like Martha's gonna fess up sooner or later. She's not gonna keep this up. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, and I think, well, I don't know whether we want to talk about this in a minute, but I think Shirley already has like some vague suspicion that everything's not okay with Martha.
Yeah, especially after the next conversation they have.
Yeah.
Yeah, so meanwhile, while this is going on, Teddy's team from the Down Deep uses ropes and grappling hooks to scale the stairway of the silo to medical supply, where Amundsen and the judicial goons are waiting to arrest them, having been tipped off thanks to Bernard's manipulations of Martha. So, yeah, so I guess the cameras are all out below 120. We know this, but medical supply is above that, right? So, wouldn't they have been seen even without Martha's help? Like, wouldn't they be seen on the cameras in the central shaft in the silo?
Yes, but without Martha's help, could all those judicial goons have gotten there in time?
No, it's true. That's true. They were waiting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Martha goes back to her workshop and turns the camera back on and starts drinking. And Shirley stops by to check on Shirley stops by to check on her, and Martha lies about the pump repair. Shirley tells Martha that Teddy and the team were arrested and they don't know if anyone was hurt or worse. They can't figure out how the raiders found out, but there must be a snitch somewhere down there. Walker is feeling all the guilt and self-disgust now, but plays it cool enough, starting to make casual mentions of it being too tense out there for her to venture out anymore. Martha ushers Shirley out, saying she's tired, but presumably also to prevent Shirley from saying anything else incriminating. And she gives the camera the finger, and behind the monitors in the watcher's room, Bernard smiles. Creepy little, creepy dude. Um, so yeah, I agree with you. I think that Shirley's already giving her looks like she's getting suspicious. What do you think will happen first? That Shirley will confront her or Martha will confess?
I think Shirley will confront her and then Martha will confess.
Okay. All right. All right.
And now there's a really interesting point, because at that point, do Mechanical then have a double agent?
Well, that's what I'm wondering. Is Martha going to become a double agent?
Yeah.
All right. Any other thoughts about Silo 18 before we switch to the other?
Nope, let's crack on to Silo 17.
All right. So Juliette's not alone in Silo 17. Rebecca Ferguson, she picks up the hatchet that she found on the ground when she got out of the water, and she begins to follow the trail of blood that ended the last episode, looking for Solo. But then the pain kicks in, starting in her ears. It's the bends. Following Solo's advice from the last episode, she rigs a breathing tube to go down as far as possible. He said at least 20 feet. And she alternates between breathing through the tube and waiting for the pain racking her body to subside until the air stops coming through the tube again and she's forced to surface. Luckily, it looks like she had been down there long enough,
A
right?
good
She was
while, yeah.
Yeah, she was not writhing as much anymore, at least. So when she gets out, someone's waiting for her, looking menacing and backlighting, but she also looks menacing, wielding her little axe. And they tell her they killed that man, and they'll kill her too if she doesn't go away. She doesn't believe them, asking to talk to him, and the voice says he warned her as an arrow pierces her in the shoulder. And yeah, so Juliette, I think, is being kind of cold here. The man you took has something I need. I would say this is
Yeah!
one of the biggest book reader gripes is people are like, in the books, she helps Solo because she cared about him and she's a good person, not because she needed something from him.
Yeah, no, I thought that I think less of Juliette. Having watched this episode, she is now no longer a 1 on the Juliette to Simpson scale. I'm moving her up to a 2. Like, yeah,
Okay.
that was really cold.
Mm-hmm.
Like she would have died of a gnarly infection in her arm if it wasn't for Solo.
That's true.
Yeah.
She would have never gotten food, I guess, or
She would never have gotten food.
Maybe, but yeah.
She would never have been able to build the suit she's building.
Mm-hmm.
Without Solo's help. So I thought that was really, yeah, no, I'm with the book readers on this. I thought that was unnecessarily, like, cold of her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, so we're going to learn shortly that this is kids. So I guess they're deepening their voice somehow, or one of them is like an older teen guy. So I guess maybe if he pitches his voice down here.
Yeah.
um.
Do we think
Yeah.
Solo is dead?
Do you think Solo is dead?
No.
Okay. How do you think that they, or at least one of them, knows archery? Because it doesn't seem like a practical sport for the silo. And
No.
even if like it was like, I can imagine, okay, maybe they had archery practice, but why would they do that? But then still, like, the rebellion was more than 25 years ago, so before these kids were born. So how did they learn archery?
That is a
One of
very
them.
good question.
Mm-hmm.
That is a very good
Okay.
question. And
I'm curious.
are these kids' parents out there somewhere as well? Because, like you
Do,
say,
do, do, do.
they haven't. They they look as though they must have been born after the rebellion.
Right. Yeah, and I have to say the AD identifies them all as teenagers, which tracks with what I
Yeah.
thought. Yeah. So Juliette, after she gets pierced with the arrow, she cleans and patches up her shoulder and takes what are presumably pain meds, and then she grabs a shield and a piece of rebar as a weapon and goes looking for Solo and his captors again. And she sees a body covered in a bloody sheet on a bridge, and she creeps over to check it, but then the body springs up, covered in armor, so she can't see who it is, and attacks her with a club. And so Juliette defends herself and asks the figure to stop. And ultimately, Juliette pins the figure down and tears off the helmet, revealing what audio description confirms is a teenage girl. Just then, two other teens, older teens, round the stairs, a boy with the hatchet and a girl with a bow. And the girl says she put the arrow in Juliette's shoulder, and if Juliette makes one more move, she'll put the next in her heart. Cut to black. Thoughts, Luke?
I mean, we've kind of assumed ever since episode 1 of season 2 that Solo was not the only person alive in Silo 17.
Mm-hmm.
But it is sort of, we now have confirmation that is in fact the case.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to know who these teenagers are, because
Mm-hmm.
I mean it's not all that surprising that there are survivors, because if you think about what we know about what happened in Silo 17, presumably not everybody wanted to go outside.
Right. There was a civil war about it. So,
Yeah,
yeah, not everybody did.
there
Yeah.
was a civil war, and given the sort of toxic nature of the air and the flooding, if you
Mm-hmm.
were a family in the upper mids
Mm-hmm.
in Silo 17, there is probably, I don't know, maybe a sort of 10 level sweet spot where you are low enough that the toxic air won't get you and the groundwater hasn't got you yet.
Right.
Yeah.
And we know that there was a working farm. We saw Juliette get water from it in the first episode.
Yeah.
And
So it's
it
not.
was the lights were on and it was growing things. So there's food about.
Yeah, so like Silo 17 is a livable environment outside of the legacy bunker that Solo was living
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. I mean, Juliette's been living out there for
Yeah,
however we decided 2 weeks. Yeah.
yeah. This is why I think it would be useful to know like how much time has passed.
Yeah.
So I think the next question is Solo dead? I'm going to say no, but I'm not basing that on anything other than the fact that I don't really want him to. It would be more
To
interesting.
be.
Yeah, it would be more interesting if he were alive.
Yeah. It would be sad for his character to go like that.
Yeah.
No.
So is Solo alive? And have the kids managed to get into the legacy?
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, oh, because they have Solo now, you mean? Have they gotten
Yes.
in there now? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So these are obviously, this is probably who cut Juliette's rope in episode 1, indeed. I do say they're raising the kids as they're introduced, they're raising questions for book readers, and I'm gonna talk about it in this week's spoiler cast, but I do think I know the names of these three characters, and that will likely be confirmed next week. But I was wondering, actually, Abby made me think of this last week. So when Solo was worried that Juliette wasn't real, he's like, "Oh, I want you to eat this. So if I see you eat this, I know you're real." I wonder if he saw these kids before and thought they weren't real.
Yeah, possibly.
Hmm. Well,
In good point, Abby.
yeah. So I did read an excerpt of the violent but less violent than in the show first meeting between these characters in the Wool Book breakdown in the book club. But yeah, elements of that are still spoilery here at this point. So we'll see what happens next week and if I can say more. But as I said, yeah, the topic of this week's spoiler cast is I did read the names and ages of the book version of these associated characters last week in the spoiler cast. We don't know if they're the same here, but this week, Abby and I are going to talk through who exactly these characters are, where they came from, and where their story goes from this point, which in some cases goes to the end of the TV show and likely beyond. We're going to follow, yeah, what happens there. But Luke, how old do you think these three are?
Between about 14 and 16?
I mean, yeah, the two on the stairs I thought were like 18. That was my read, but they always get older actors to play younger characters, so I don't know.
Yeah.
And then I thought the one on the stairs that Juliette pinned, I was guessing like 14, 15.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which would be aging up the associated characters, but I expected that to happen.
Yeah. Because you can't really have like Rebecca Ferguson like wrestling children. It just wouldn't look right.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. And also it's just easier to work with older kids and laws and stuff, and also
Yeah.
acting wise and school and blah blah, all that. Yeah. All right. And that brings us to the end of the episode. Any final thoughts on episode 8, the Book of Quinn?
I'm just so relieved that Lukas had a shower and a change of clothes.
We're all happy for him.
It was causing me and Abby and several other people on Blue Sky a distinct amount of agita. So I'm glad that his personal hygiene issue has been dealt with.
Yes.
Yeah.
we hear about that a little bit in the feedback too.
Yeah.
People are happy. What are your hopes for the final 2 episodes of this season?
I want to see the denouement between Judge Sims and Bernard. Like I said this in the preview that one of them was going to try and kill the other. Everything that's happened in the series thus far has convinced me that that's more and more accurate, and it just feels like that's. I don't want that to get dragged into series 3. This feels like it feels like it's building towards a resolution, and I hope it gets there inside of series 2.
Well, wait, what part do you want resolved?
Bernard, basically, does Bernard kill Sims, or does Sims kill Bernard, or how does this power struggle, for want of a better phrase, how does it resolve itself?
And if Juliette does make it back, how does she play into that?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously I want to see that. There are certain book elements from particularly Lukas and Martha that I'm waiting for those to kick in. I'm like, come on, don't be coy. So I'm hoping that comes into play. And I want to know where Danny is. I didn't forget him. Danny Bly, you're out there. The other Scotty stand-in.
Like, I've just got this image now of Mechanical in, like, episode 10, staging a breakout for Carla, and Danny's just hanging out somewhere in the back. They're just Danny, poor Danny there with a bag over his head.
Right. I help Juliette. Help me.
Yeah.
All right. Well, 2 episodes left. Basically 2 hours of television to get these hopefully get these questions answered. And we're going to do a final mailbag about a week after the finale. So you're going to get a mailbag from episodes 6 through 8 very shortly after this episode. But then the final mailbag for especially episodes 7 and 8 about a week after the finale, so that people have time to get their thoughts in. And yeah, we definitely want to hear your show thoughts and theories. Please email them to woolshiftdustpodcast@gmail.com. You'll find that link in the show notes. And if you send it to that email address, book spoilers are also welcome, but those will be included on the spoiler cast. Also, do join us on Discord. We've got a dedicated forum with separate chats per episode and a book spoiler discussion as well. And of course, there's also the book club, where Supercast and Patreon subscribers get breakdowns of the Silo books and short stories, season 1 spoilery rewatch, extra interviews with Hugh Howey with full book spoilers, and weekly spoiler casts, plus additional episodes with extra seasonal specials, additional Howey book breakdowns, Doom book breakdowns coming up after Silo, and yeah, just keeping that populated with extras, book-based extras. And I would like to welcome new Silazins: Natalie W., Kale H., Catherine G., Will S., Becky Bullis, Drew Jordan, Brian C., and Maggie, and new stories in the TCS, who has been very active, fun, and insightful in the Discord. So glad to have you as a stories in. That means that she has access to not only the Silo feed, but also the extra Star Wars canon Padawan timeline feed. But if you're not interested in these extras, there is also the season pass option that allows you to just get the Silo episodes for a one-time fee for season 1 in the books, or season 2, or double season pass for both. You'll find links in the show notes with more information about all of that. But if you are not interested in any of that stuff, we're just glad you're listening. Thank you so much. And thank you so much to those of you who have been recommending this pod to other people. I've been hearing from both the recommenders and recommendees, and I just really appreciate that. And I really appreciate the positive reviews that people have been leaving. It just helps us so much, both in terms of motivation, but also in terms of getting more ears on this podcast so that we can keep this party going.
Yeah, I'd associate myself with all of that. Thank you to all the people that I know have been following me on Blue Sky, as a result of this podcast. So please swing by my mentions and say hi. I tried to be a bit more active on the Discord, but I'm probably not as active as I should be. So New Year's resolution,
You pop up now. Yeah.
Gonna pop up on more on the Discord. But thank you for everybody that's following me on Blue Sky. I know that the vast majority of you are following me because of this podcast, and it's been really nice. Those of you that have reached out and introduced yourself, it's been really nice to meet you virtually and to say hello.
Yes. And you can find both of our links to both of our Blue Sky accounts in the show notes, as well as the Discord and everything else. And you'll also find their links to the other podcasts on our network, including parent podcast, the Lorehounds, where you'll find me there as well, with lots of Marvel and DC coverage going on and coming up right now. Also, a Wicked one shot was recently released. We've got the Agatha Coven quiz. Nosferatu is coming up shortly, and there was a new Silmarillion story out. There's just lots of things. That's the busiest feed. You'll find the most stuff. So definitely recommend you subscribe there. And also do check out my other podcast, the Star Wars Canon Timeline podcast, where I am, now that things are under control with the other projects I was working on, focusing full on there. With next up, Star Wars Visions, with 2 episodes set during the High Republic. And in the Canon Padawan feed, Storyzins will get a special episode about Darth Nihilus, and then a bunch of episodes coming up about the High Republic stories and book recaps, and also Phase 4, the Fall of the Jedi book and story recaps, leading up to, with backstories on characters like Qui-Gon, leading up to the prequel trilogy. So it's going to be much busier over there in the coming months. On the Properly Howard feed, they're still doing their A Few Good Films series. Radioactive Ramblings just released their second Ghibli episode about Spirited Away, and they did Arcane, and they're doing Red Rising, the book series. Nevermind the Music, combining music and psychology, and they just did a special episode for Defying Gravity from Wicked. And I just really had to stop myself from not singing there, so you're welcome. And Severance Season 2 is beginning on Apple TV Plus the same day that the Silo Season 2 finale airs. So do check out the separate Severance feed. Just look for Severance Lorehounds and you'll find it. And that's where the Severance episode breakdowns are. You can catch up on Season 1. Season 2 is coming. And Luke, what's up with It Could Be Said? You had your end of year multiple podcasts?
No, I'm really sorry for anybody that's waiting for that. We've had umpteen problems trying to find a time when 3 people can record that. I don't want to get into it because
right.
me talking about personal issues with my co-host, but there's been a whole host of stuff that has prevented us from recording that. I believe the plan is we will record at least the first of those tomorrow, the 5th of January. We haven't forgotten. We are going to record it. I'm so sorry if people have been waiting, but circumstances beyond our control have intervened massively and repeatedly.
It happens.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts before we go?
No, I just really want to get on to watching episode. I just really want to get on to watching episode 9 now, and now I can.
Okay,
we've recorded this
yes.
episode.
But first, we're going to record the mailbag episode through episode 8. So you'll get that in your feed in a couple days, and then on Friday you'll get episode 9 drop. Plus, of course, a spoiler cast before that for Silos and Stories Ins and season pass holders. So we'll see you back here for all that. Just try not to beat up any teenagers on your way home.
At Kroger, an annual Boost membership just got even better. Now you can choose from Disney Plus with ads, Hulu with ads, or ESPN Plus on us when you sign up. Plus, enjoy unlimited free delivery, double fuel points, exclusive offers, and free items. Sign up for a Boost membership today. It's an easier way to save, including new streaming options to relax with while we deliver your groceries. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Restrictions apply. See site for details.